I spent a long time going over it this week. It's more than 100 pages, very long executive order, and it's also very comprehensive. It's sort of like a sort of grab bag of regulations and rules governing artificial intelligence in all of its forms.
Yeah, and the part of the order that has gotten the most attention is the aspect that attempts to regulate the creation of next generation models. So the stuff that we're using every day, the BARDs, the GPT-4s, those are mostly left out of this order. But if there is to be a GPT-5 or a Claude 3, presumably it will fall under the rubric that the president is established here. And when it does, it will then have some new requirements. First, starting with, they will have to inform the federal government that they have trained such a model, and they will have to also disclose what safety tests they have done on it to understand what capabilities it has. So, I mean, to me, that is the big screaming bullet that came out is like, okay, we actually are going to at least put some disclosure requirements around the big AI companies.
Totally. And the industry, I would say, was surprised by this. The people I talked to at AI companies, they did not know that this exact thing was coming. And they were also not sure what the sort of threshold would be where, these rules would kick in. Would they apply to all models, big or small? And it turns out that one threshold for when these requirements kick in is when a model has been trained using an amount of computing power that is greater than 10 to the 26th power floating point operations, or flops. I looked this up. That is 100 septillion flops.
Wow, that's more flops than we've ever had on this podcast.
So that was a piece that I think caught the industry's attention. And to me, the big takeaway from this, the thing that if you know nothing else about this executive order, you should know is that it basically signals to the AI industry from Washington, we are watching you, right? This is not going to be another social media where you have a decade to sort of build and chase growth and spread your products all over the world before we start holding hearings and holding people accountable. We are actually going to be looking at this in the very early days of generative AI.
Yes, that is true, but it is also, I think, proving to be really controversial.
Totally.
Some of the AI
so let's
crowd.
talk about some of the controversies around this executive order, because the provision that you mentioned, this sort of computing threshold over which you have to tell the government that you are training an AI model, has been getting a lot of blowback from people in the tech industry. So describe what you're hearing.
People are losing their minds, like legitimately. Like you can go on X and Threads and see Jan LeCun, who is the chief scientist at Meta and a major proponent of open source AI, ringing a bunch of alarm bells. And there really is a huge dispute in this community right now around the idea of open sourced AI versus a more closed approach. So, briefly, open source technology can be analyzed, examined. You can look at the code. You can usually fork it, change it to do your bidding. And the people who love it say, this is actually the safest way to do this, because if you get thousands and thousands of eyes on this, including people who might not have a direct profit motive, you are going to eventually build safer, better tech. You're going to democratize that tech, and we're all going to be better off, right? And then you have the people who are taking a closed approach, and in that group, I would include OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, and they're saying, well, we do see a lot of potential avenues for harm here. And so instead of just putting it up on GitHub and letting anybody download it and go nuts, we're going to build it ourselves. We're going to do a bunch of rigorous testing. We'll tell you about the test, but we are not going to let everyone play with it.
Right. So this debate has been swirling in Silicon Valley for months now, but it really seems to have come to a head over this issue of having to report to the government if you are training a model larger than a certain size. So let's just talk about that, because to me, I don't get the backlash to this. It's not telling AI developers you can't make a very large model. You're not allowed to. It's not even saying you can't make an open source model that is very large. All it's saying is this: if you're building a model that is bigger than a certain size, 10 to the 26th power flops, or it's just very fun to say flops.
It's so fun to say flops. And the next time one of my friends has a huge failure, I'm going to say it's giving 10 to the 26th power flops. I'm saying, you flop so hard, you're going to have to tell the federal government, bitch.